La tuberculosis es una enfermedad infectocontagiosa aún presente en nuestro país y que puede ser muy grave. A pesar de ser una enfermedad que ataca principalmente a los pulmones, también puede afectar al cerebro, los huesos, las articulaciones, riñones y ganglios.
An estimated 1/3 of the world's population is infected with tuberculosis. 1/3. And here's the culprit, the minuscule bacterium called Mycobacterium tuberculosis. But does that mean 2.3 billion people are sick? Fortunately not. Only a small proportion of them actually become sick. To understand why, let's take a closer look at the bacterium itself. When someone with TB coughs, they expel little drops of saliva that fly into the air. Some of them may contain the TB mycobacteria, which can then be inhaled by someone close by. The mycobacteria then continue their journey down the respiratory tract and into the lungs. That person is then infected with TB. And this is where it all becomes a little more complicated. The body detects the invasion and sends out its first line of defense. This includes special cells called macrophages, which engulf the mycobacteria and transport them to the lymph nodes, where they are neutralized. If they're neutralized, the person will have what is called latent tuberculosis. This means they're infected with the bacterium, but they don't have active TB disease, and they're not sick. However, in 5% of cases, the immune system is overwhelmed. The TB mycobacteria multiply and escape, and the person falls ill. This often happens with young children, whose immune systems are not fully developed. In other cases, latent TB can wake up and become active TB. This can happen months later, or even years later, especially in adults with weak immune systems. For example, people who are HIV positive, or who've had organ transplants, or who are undergoing chemotherapy. Once in the lungs, the bacteria may spread via the bloodstream or the lymphatic system to other parts of the body, to the lymph nodes, bones and joints, the digestive system, the central nervous system, the liver, or the heart. So what happens when someone has active TB? Let's imagine the infections in the lungs, as this is the most commonplace. The patient starts coughing, has difficulty breathing, and suffers from chest pains. If these symptoms last for more than a few weeks, and are accompanied by fever, night sweats, and weight loss, the doctor has good reason to suspect tuberculosis. The next stage is diagnosis, and then treatment. The battle is far from over. Tuberculosis is one of the world's biggest killers, but it doesn't choose its victims uniformly. These 22 countries, mostly in Asia and Africa, have the highest numbers of people with the disease. India and China alone account for 45% of TB cases worldwide. Same map, different focus. Instead of taking the total number of TB cases, let's look at what proportion of the population is affected. Out go India and China, and in come Cambodia and South Africa with the highest prevalence rates. To make it simpler, imagine a group of 100,000 people. In Cambodia, 764 of those people will have TB. In China, only 99 will have the disease. So this helps give a better idea of the burden of disease. A third set of data completes the picture. Countries where TB is spreading the fastest. Here it's Southern Africa that jumps to the top, with Swaziland, South Africa, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe reporting the highest number of new cases in 2013. So why does TB spread faster in some countries than others? For the answer, we need to look at the HIV/AIDS epidemic, as TB attacks the weakened immune systems of people with the HIV virus. In South Africa, for example, we see that the number of TB cases suddenly increased in the early 2000s as the HIV/AIDS epidemic exploded in the country. But there's one more thing we need to take into account to better understand TB today. For this, we need another map, one showing drug resistance. That's to say, TB cases that are difficult to treat because the bacillus has become resistant to anti-TB medications. And here, Eastern Europe and Central Asia light up. Why is this important? Because although we managed to cure around 80% of drug-sensitive cases of TB, that figure drops to below 50% when TB is resistant to the most commonly used tuberculosis drugs. All these maps show one thing. TB may be an old disease, but it continues to be a threat. And two new factors, co-infection with HIV and more drug-resistant forms of the disease, are making all the more urgent the need to find new ways to fight TB.